I'm Michael Ducharme. I'm a third-year doctoral student in composition at UBC. I have a focus in computer music because I have a background in information technology and programming. My understanding of the ACTA project is that it is an opportunity to explore various instrumental colors and color combinations and timbres and see what works with a very varied ensemble of performers. So the instrumentation that I'm going to be using is violin, bass clarinet, tenor trombone, and percussion. So the percussion instruments that I'm considering using are vibraphone, flexitone, suspended cymbal, tam-tam, maybe bass drum, and perhaps another battery of smaller instruments. And it's really mostly to get a lot of different possible color combinations and things like that, because percussion is really valuable for adding color to the ensemble. Well, some of the issues that I see in writing the piece are simply the fact that the ensemble is so varied. You have one instrument from each orchestral choir, essentially. So there are potential balance concerns in there, and also it's a lot harder to get everybody to blend if the goal is to achieve a blend. So I have to think very carefully about the particular articulations and techniques that are used in order to achieve a blend in places, as opposed to always having it sound like four different elements. My piece is going to be 8 minutes in length approximately, and what I am looking at doing is exploring the idea of moving from a pitch focus to noise and back again, and various explorations around that. So the idea of, for instance, hearing a transmission, and then maybe you get static, and then it fades back in, and you hear it again, and then you get static again. So that idea, and more generally, just the idea of starting with something simple, like a single pitch, and then deconstructing that and kind of warping that into this complex thing, and then basically reforming it back. And so that's kind of the basic idea of the piece, and I think that's also my conception of the form of the piece. So the things I'm going to be doing in the piece to investigate orchestration with the various instruments. With the violin, I'm looking at using transitions between regular bow pressure and overpressure to create that sense of moving from pitch to noise and then back to pitch again. With bass clarinet, I would be looking at using things like multiphonics and air noise, and with the trombone, there's air noise, and also using a flutter tongue, and of course the percussionist would switch back and forth between using pitched percussion instruments and unpitched instruments. So the challenges that I foresee when I'm working on this piece and trying to convey some of these ideas are really related to the extended techniques, the balance of them in the various instruments, since they can vary quite wildly from instrument to instrument and from technique to technique, and also really finding the techniques that work well together when it comes to matching one another. The way that I see myself working with this ensemble is I was going to prepare many different ideas and variations and score them out and bring them to try out and see what works and see what doesn't, and perhaps get some feedback from them, get some ideas from them as to something that might work that I hadn't considered, and then trying those things out. So this is different from my normal approach, because in most cases I would go and write the piece and then I give it to the ensemble once it is finished, and maybe I only make a few changes after that point. In this case, I'm getting to work with the ensemble at quite an early stage of the writing while I'm still formulating the piece. And the thing that's useful about this particular approach is that when I'm working in my normal mode, I find that I'm more conservative when it comes to use of techniques. I use techniques that I know are going to balance, that I know are going to work well in this situation, because in those cases I don't necessarily want to write something and the whole passage is not going to work because of the techniques that I've chosen. And in this case, that's not a risk because I get to work with the ensemble, so I get to try these things out and see how, make sure that they actually work. It's really an exciting project, I think, especially because the ensemble is so unusual. It's not necessarily the grouping that I would have picked if I was going to write a piece. So having this kind of interesting grouping to work with, it's an interesting challenge, and it's different than one that I've really tackled before.